morning.
Good morning.
Back in the early 80s when I initiated this commission, I didn't expect to have this commission do as well as you have in saving over $3 billion in such a short period of time. And that's a record that needs to go not just to Sacramento, but also to Washington, D.C. First, let me tell you a little story about a pirate. This pirate went down to his local pub where he hadn't been visiting for a while. And he walked in and the bartender said, "Mate, well, what happened to you? I haven't seen you in a while." He said, "Well, I'm fine." He said, "I've been out at sea." He said, "Well, you say you look well, but I look at you, you really don't look too well. There's some problems that have occurred. What happened? What happened?" The pirate said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, when you were last in here, you didn't have a wooden leg. What happened there?" He said, "Well, I was in a battle on the ship, and a cannonball hit me and blew off my leg." He says, "But I'm okay now." "Okay." He said, "But what about your hand? You didn't have a hook before. What happened there?" He said, "Well, I was in this sword fight, and I lost my hand. But I got a hook now, so I'm okay." And the bartender said, "Oh, you're okay. A leg, a leg, a hand is now a hook. But what about the eye patch? You didn't have that before." He said, "No," I said, "I was out at sea, and a flock of birds flew by, and I looked up, and they pooped in my eye." The bartender said, "Bird poop put out your eye?" "No. It was the first day I had the hook." Let me talk about bringing together the public-private sector to focus on issues. It really comes down to really leadership, because you can bring public and private sectors together time after time. The editorialists like to write their great editorials in the newspapers that only they themselves understand or fully support, whereas the public doesn't. But it really comes down to leadership, 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 leadership. And I want to go back in history about a man who had leadership and recite what really is the characteristics of a good leader. In Donald Phillips' book on Lincoln and leadership, he examined those parts of leadership according to Lincoln. And he went into people, character, endeavor, and communication. On people, a characteristic of a good leader is you get out of the office and circulate among the troops. You build strong alliances, and you remember that it's always better to try to persuade than to coerce. Abraham Lincoln. On character, that honesty and integrity are respected and rewarded. Never act out of vengeance or spite, and have the courage to handle unjust criticism. And then be a master of paradox by offering your folks security while also encouraging risk-taking. On endeavor, exercise a strong hand and be decisive. Lead by giving your subordinates the freedom to make decisions, and set goals and be results-oriented. And keep searching until you find your Grant, General Grant. Don't be afraid to go through and support a few generals until you find the one that will fight. And then encourage innovation. And on communication, master the art of public speaking. Influence people through conversation and storytelling. And then preach a vision and continually reaffirm it. What's interesting is that by taking a page out of Lincoln and helping move our country forward, that's what we have to do. John Maxwell said there is no such thing as leadership during tough times. There's only leadership. And while we are in tough times today, it is possible for Sacramento to get out of the hole they dug if they do have the leadership there from both houses of the legislature and the executive office. We're sending a letter to the governor today to create a blue ribbon commission where you would bring, let's say, 5 of the representatives from our major business schools in the state of California, Locally, we were able to use the Arthur Anderson School and the LA County's ED Commission, who worked together and developed the consolidation of the County of Los Angeles back in the 80s when they said it couldn't be done. We said it could be. We brought in a public-private partnership that did save this county, as a result of that, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, is to create a similar like productivity efficiency commission using this basis, but having your 5 representatives from our major business schools in California. They can be from the Marshall School, the Anderson School, or from the UC Berkeley, or from Claremont. It doesn't matter. But get 5 individuals, men and women, sit down and look at a structural reform of our system. Not just another Band-Aid or tax here and get us by for another year, but a structural reform. You need to build a foundation, not rearrange the furniture in the top floor of a building. Secondly, you need to make some consolidation and elimination of conflicting agencies. The Franchise Tax Board and the Board of Equalizations could be combined. They say, well, it's only going to save $1 or $2 million. Well, that's a start. That would feed many children. I know many of our foster children could really have a chance when they were emancipated if they had that type of money to help them assist into the mainstream. They also need to look at a part-time legislature. We have a full-time legislature. They haven't done the job. Many states have part-time legislatures. They have done the job. But a part-time legislature would keep the people with the troops, as Lincoln always said, be involved with the people. Getting the people back in the classroom teaching, or the pharmacist serving the public, or whatever their position in the private sector would be, having them there part-time, working with the legislature part-time would bring a sense of reality of what is going on. And ending the term limits. Term limits has been a disservice. When I served in the state legislature, I served under Speaker Willie Brown, Leo McCarthy, Bob Moretti. They were strong leaders, and we came together, and we had differences, but we had budgets basically on time, or within time, and we had a good relationship. But having an end to term limits would end having a speaker for 52 weeks and then replacing them. Along with that, it makes no sense for the legislature to pass legislation to give this school district $100,000 or this wonderful youth group $50,000 appropriation for their wonderful jobs when it costs them $500,000 to pass that legislation. So put a ceiling as to, or I should say a floor, that you can't introduce legislation that's going to cost more than the recipient is going to receive. And having these types of structural reforms would ensure that they would start getting on a fiscal responsibility. And we're going to have to look at civil service and other types of reforms, but we need to get this dialogue going. And having a 5-member Blue Ribbon Commission, and with the legislature then in a special session to deal with those issues, we can move this state forward. There's no reason out of 50 states, this state, which is the Golden State, which has so much going for it. We have international, in fact, our ports, 70% of all the goods in our ports go outside Los Angeles County to the rest of the world. This is an international haven. We have the greatest research centers, the greatest entertainment centers, we're the greatest aerospace center, that we cannot do an effective job in managing our money at the state level and allowing our cities, our counties, and our school boards to be able to do their job as well. So these types of structural reforms would be important that would benefit everyone. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, if you're Democrat, if you're independent, or you don't know. We could do it. We have the people in this state, but we just need to get across this out of the pit that we are now in. So you have done an incredible job. You are an example. The Productivity Efficiency Commission has done an incredible job. That's the type of roadmap we ought to have our state have to get out of the fiscal mess that we're in today. But like they say, there are 3 types of people in the world: those who make things happen, those who wondered what happened, and you are the people who will make things happen because you have, and this is the record that we need to take, not just to Sacramento, but also to Washington. Well, thank you very much for your service. Thank you very much for what you've done and through your leadership. We hope you'll be this shining bright light for the rest of the nation to see what they can also do when we we bring public and private sectors together to focus on an issue. Fiscal responsibility is the key issue that we all have. Well, thank you very much for serving.